All of you in this room have the brains to do extremely well in life. You've all got the energy to do extremely well in life. And then the question is, how do you apply it? If you've got a 200 horsepower motor, do you get 200 horsepower out of it? Do you get your full potential, or do you get 100 horsepower or 50 horsepower? Now, when we hire people, we look for three qualities. We look for integrity, we look for intelligence, and we look for energy. But if they don't have the first one, integrity, the other two will kill you. Because if you're hiring somebody without integrity, you really want them to be dumb and lazy, don't you? I mean, last thing in the world you want for them is to be smart and energetic. So smart and energetic only goes with integrity. You make your own decision on that. You can't change your IQ or how far you can throw a football or how high you can jump or the color of your hair very easily. But you can elect to have integrity that matches anybody else's. And if you match that with intelligence, which you have, and energy, which you have, you will get an extraordinary result, and you'd be very foolish to sell me 10% of yourself for $50,000. On the other hand, if you don't match it with that, your potential will, in a significant part, go unused. And I'll give you a little simple test to apply in terms of thinking about the kind of habits you want to develop, because you can have any habit you want to be. You can be lazy, you can be prompt, you can be late, you can be honest, you can cut corners. I mean, you have all these choices. And those are choices for you to make. Nobody else is
having record profits, including many of ours. And the American populace as a whole has not come back. I mean, inequality is getting wider. The Forbes 400, which just came out, showed aggregate wealth for the Forbes 400 of $2 trillion. You go back 20 years and that was 300 billion. So it's up 6 or 7 for one. It's different people to some extent, but this is the top. 300 billion to 2 trillion. And if you read the paper today, you'd have seen that the median income, is the same place it was in terms of real purchasing power. From 1989, it hasn't changed. So the inequality is getting wider. The rich are doing extremely well, extraordinarily well. And business is doing well. Business profit margins are terrific compared to the record historically. Business returns on tangible equity are terrific. But most, a great many people in our country, if you take the bottom 20% of households, that's 24 million households or something like that, housing, close to about 60 million people, it's the top level is $22,000. I don't want to try to live on $22,000 with a couple of kids. So we've got an economy that is delivering $50,000 of GDP per capita, and we've got an awful lot of people that aren't living well. So we have learned how to turn out lots of goods and services, but we haven't learned as well how to have everybody share in the bounty that we have.
So the
market isn't there to instruct you, to tell you anything. The market is there just basically to serve you when you want it to serve you. One of the most important things to remember in stocks, very hard to do, but people have all these feelings about it. The stock doesn't know you own it. You're sitting there with these certificates for Berkshire. The company doesn't even know you own it, and the stock doesn't. It's trading now, and they don't know you own it. So it has no feelings about you. I mean, you've got all these feelings about it, but it's just part of a business. If Berkshire is worth 75,000 times 1.5 million shares, roughly 110 billion or something like that, it's a good investment. If it isn't, it's a lousy investment, and you have to value the business.
Just read and read and read. I probably read 5 to 6 hours a day. I don't read as fast now as when I was younger, but I read 5 daily newspapers. I read a fair number of magazines. I read 10Ks. I read annual reports, and I read a lot of other things too. So I've always enjoyed reading. I love reading biographies.
How can other people tap dance to work? What's the secret of that?
You find your passion. You find your passion. I was very, very lucky to find it, when I was 7 or 8 years old, and fortunately, my children have found their passion. One son loves farming like nothing else. One son loves music like everything else, and all 3 of them love philanthropy and what they get to do. You're lucky in life when you find it, and you can't guarantee you're going to find it in your first job out. But I always tell the college students that come out, I say, take the job that you would take if you were independently wealthy. You're going to do well at it. The most important thing is to be able to define which ones you can come to an intelligent decision on and which ones are beyond your capacity to evaluate. You don't have to be right about thousands and thousands and thousands of companies. You only have to be right about a couple. I don't have to understand all kinds of business. There's all kinds of business I don't understand, but there's thousands of opportunities there. I did understand the Bank of America, and I'll be able. I'm able to do that.
If you think you're going to be a lot happier if you've got 2x instead of x, you're probably making a mistake. I mean, you ought to find something you like that works with that, and you'll get in trouble if you think that making 10x or 20x is the answer to everything in life, because then you will do things like borrow money when you shouldn't, or maybe cut corners on things that your employer wants you to cut corners on.
Ted Williams wrote a book called The Science of Hitting. And in The Science of Hitting, he's got a diagram. It shows him at the plate. And he's got the strike zone divided into 77 squares, each the size of a baseball. And he says, if I only swing at pitches in my sweet zone, which he shows there, and he has what his batting average would be, which is 400. If he had to swing at low outside pitches, but still in the strike zone, his average would be 230. He said the most important thing in hitting is waiting for the right pitch. In investing, there's no called strikes. People can throw Microsoft at me and, you name it, any stock, General Motors, and I don't have to swing. And nobody's going to call me out on called strikes. I only get a strike called if I swing at a pitch and miss. So I can wait there and look at thousands of companies day after day, and only when I see something I understand and when I like the price at which it's selling, then if I swing, if I hit it, fine. If I miss it, it's a strike. But it's an enormously advantageous game. And it's a terrible mistake to think you have to have an opinion on everything. You only have to have an opinion on a few things. In fact, I've told students, if when they got out of school, they got a punch card with 20 punches on it, and that's all the investment decisions they got to make in their entire life, they would get very rich because they would think very hard about each one. And you don't need 20 right decisions to get very rich. 4 or 5 will probably do it over time. So I don't worry too much about the things I don't understand.
There's a whole bunch of things I don't know a thing about. I just stay away from those. Tom Watson said it best. He said, I'm no genius, but I'm smart in spots, and I stay around those spots. Well, I try and stay around those spots, and I just don't have a problem if somebody says, you're wrong on something. I go back and look at the facts. I think that really is much more important, frankly, than having a few points of IQ or having an extra course or two in school or anything of the sort. You need emotional stability.
The first rule in investment is don't lose. And the second rule in investment is don't forget the first rule. And that's all the rules there are. I mean, if you buy things for far below what they're worth and you buy a group of them, you basically don't lose money.
Biggest mistakes people make when investing?
Well, they try to, they just don't realize that all you have to do is just buy a cross-section of America and then never listen to people like me or read the papers or do anything subsequently. They think that because you can trade, you should trade. You buy a farm, you buy an apartment house, you can't resell it tomorrow. And the cost of moving around. Now you get something handed to you, liquidity, which is instant. You can sell, and the cost of doing it are pennies, compared to other kinds of investment activity. So because they can so easily move around, they do move around, and moving around is not smart.
If you're lucky enough to be born in this country, you've won the lottery already. But we should have a system, in my view, that encourages the Jack Welches and the Bill Gateses and all of that to work far beyond the time when it has any economic significance to them. We want people commanding those resources who are extremely able at commanding them. That's how the standard of living moves forward. So we should want